E enquanto os projetos do mercado cripto estão sendo caçados pela SEC, a Polkadot já conseguiu uma grande vitória ao final de 2022. A DOT mudou oficialmente de ser considerada uma security para ser considerada um software, em conformidade com a SEC nos Estados Unidos. Mas o que é Polkadot? Polkadot é o protocolo open source de compartilhamento multi-chain, que facilita a transferência cross-chain de qualquer tipo de dado ou ativo, não apenas tokens, tornando assim uma ampla gama de blockchains interoperáveis entre si. Esta interoperabilidade procura estabelecer uma rede totalmente descentralizada e privada, controlada pelos seus usuários, simplificando a criação de novas aplicações, instituições e serviços. O token nativo da Polkadot, DOT, serve a 3 propósitos claros: fornecer governança e operação na rede e criar parachains, cadeias paralelas, por ligação. Os blockchains personalizados são rápidos e fáceis de desenvolver através da estrutura Substrate e podem se conectar à rede Polkadot em poucos minutos. A rede também é altamente flexível e adaptável, permitindo o compartilhamento de informações entre os participantes, semelhantes aos aplicativos para smartphones. A Polkadot pode ser atualizada automaticamente para implementar novos recursos ou remover bugs sem a necessidade de um fork. Mas então, como essa mudança do token DOT aconteceu? Após seu 3º aniversário de engajamento proativo com a SEC, a Web3 Foundation anuncia hoje um passo marcante para a conquista da Web3, uma internet descentralizada, sem necessidade de confiança e sem servidor. O token nativo da Polkadot Blockchain DOT, inicialmente oferecido, vendido e entregue aos compradores como garantia, se transformou e não é mais um security, é um software. Nesse vídeo, Joshua Ashley Klayman, advogado do escritório de advocacia Linklaters, explica um pouco sobre como essa mudança aconteceu.
Can you guys chat a little bit around the morphing argument, right? That Polkadot, it was perhaps a security at some point potentially, but it has certainly now at this point morphed into software, right? And do you expect regulators to kind of respond to this argument, and how have they publicly, responded to arguments like this to date?
Okay, so thinking back to frankly, 2017, I'll just mention very briefly the Dow report when it came out, right? It was the SEC's first real line in the sand. And I won't go into everything that was said, obviously. It was clear from the Dow report that the SEC was saying that the Dow token itself was a security, right? And it talked about the downstream effects, et cetera, and said no matter where you launch from, if you're selling to US persons for fundraising, sales of a digital asset, US federal securities laws are going to matter. So just bear that in mind, right? And since then, we've seen a lot of enforcement actions. We've also seen from the Telegram case that basically the argument that people had tried to make that something could change form through a SAFT, right? So you would sell something pursuant to an available exemption from registration, right? This piece of paper, this SAFT, and what you would deliver, even though what you sold was a security, that you would somehow in the interim build out your token, build out your blockchain and your ecosystem, and then you deliver something and it wouldn't be a security. We've seen from the Telegram case that actually doesn't work, right? The SAFT can work for a purpose, but not for that purpose. And what the Telegram court said, among other things, essentially was that you look at what happened at the time of the initial offer and sale. And the delivery of that token is not a distinct transaction from that initial offer and sale. So if you sold something, pursuant to an exemption from registration because you knew you were fundraising, for example, you need to deliver it pursuant to that same exemption from registration to the same person, and you need to comply with the requirements for that. So making sure that people are not purchasing for resale, for immediate resale, for example. They're purchasing with a view to consume, things like that. Just many, many factors that I won't go into. But we think of it as, you throw the ball up pursuant to an exemption, you catch the ball pursuant to an exemption. And so Telegram having just, the SEC having just filed suit against Telegram at the time when we began to speak with FinHub, this was really on our minds, and it was on, we believe, the regulators' minds as well.
Yeah.
So part of what we did was say, okay, we're buying into this, right? We're before the regulators, we're buying into this. What can we do to get out of this? And the SEC has very helpfully, I will say, provided a way out. People might not necessarily like this way out, but there is a way out of being a security, even if you initially sold something as a security. And that is through its April 2019 framework that it released, which is available online. And that is the investment company analysis for digital assets. And so within that framework, it gets a lot of flack. People say, "Oh, almost everything is a security under this." And if I were the SEC, I'd say, "Yeah, that's what we're saying. That's exactly the point." But there also are 9 factors where it says, something initially sold as a security may be reassessed at a later point and may no longer be a security. So part of our process was to show, look, we're applying our facts against this framework. And look, we, in our view, have satisfied these. And part of this involved, and I think Angie may be better placed to discuss some of it, but putting in place processes, tech gurus are going to talk about the tech, not market the token, that there's going to be, a limitation in the hold by the foundation and its affiliates of tokens, because as Daniel said, one of the functions is governance, right? And so there are multiple factors about that. I will just say before, I guess I hand over to Angie and Daniel about this point, in terms of reaction from the regulators, well, there hasn't been, that we've seen, a public reaction. There certainly have been speeches that maybe others may want to talk about. But what we can say is during the process, not one time did anyone ever say that this didn't work or that our analysis was wrong. And given that we hope to have long futures in the industry and in legal and in broker-dealer world and the like, and that, we are licensed, these are not claims that we would make if we had any doubts in our minds.
O ecossistema da Polkadot é de fazer inveja, com vários projetos em desenvolvimento. Mais cedo esse ano, ela firmou parceria com a Toyota. Toyota, a maior empresa do Japão e um dos principais fabricantes de automóveis do mundo, está explorando novos casos de uso da Web3 por meio de uma ligação inovadora com a parachain da Polkadot Astar Network. E por fim, vamos ouvir o fundador Gavin Wood, que fala um pouco sobre o futuro das criptos e como a Polkadot se encaixa nesse futuro.
We're currently, I think, still in relatively early days of the development of this technology and of this wider aggregate platform. But we are making substantial progress. And one of the key elements is to not lose sight of what it is that's actually different. That we are actually giving users guarantees back, credible expectations that the technology works as they believe it does. And as soon as we start losing sight of that, as soon as Web3 becomes cluttered with these Web 2.5 platforms that kind of are Web3 in name but Web 2 in nature, then we start risking that the world will not change, that we will be beholden to these trust-bound platforms and the trust-bound service providers, the princes that this technology creates. So I think, for me at least, the coming 5-10 years is really about staying on target, developing the technologies in their fullest, and ensuring that the technology that people use is actually the technology that they believe they're using and that they're getting the guarantees that they expect.
E por hoje é isso, pessoal. Deixa o like, se inscreve, comenta, compartilha e a gente se vê no próximo. Valeu!
だがなおとはたとえどんなことがあっても自分が軌道経費基盤であると名乗ることはできないのだ。